Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here today at the community meeting to talk about Ithaca's Guaranteed Income. So this project is a part of a larger group of projects that many people here in this room have been working on for many months. And it has its roots in the work that the city of Ithaca has been doing since, I'd say, at least 2017, but probably before that. Trying to understand the situation of displacement from the city of Ithaca. What is causing displacement, who is getting displaced, and how we can strategize and intervene and prevent more people from getting displaced from the city of Ithaca. So Ithaca Guaranteed Income is one of the strategies that we, with other partners in this room, primarily the Human Services Coalition, who's been a lead partner, to try to prevent displacement for more people from the city of Ithaca. So we've had a lot of questions about how the project works or what the research component will be, how that looks. And when I say a lot, I mean, we've had questions in the community, and therefore we thought it would be good to have this session to try to answer some people's questions. It's being recorded. It will be posted to the HSC website where people apply for the project. So with that, we can go ahead and get started. So whoever would like to ask a question first, please feel free to, raise your hand or come on with your camera, or ask the question. You can put it in chat, however you want to handle that.
Let's do some introductions too.
Okay.
Aaron, do you want to raise? Did you have your hand raised, Aaron?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say thank you for that background, Anissa. And I wanted to introduce myself to the folks on the call, since I am probably a very unfamiliar face. My name is Erin Coltrera, and I'm a research and program officer at the Center for Guaranteed Income Research at the University of Pennsylvania. We're handling the evaluation of this pilot. So I'm happy to answer questions about the survey, right? Including why it's so long, or why we're asking personal questions, and how that relates to the body of evidence that we're trying to build about what cash can do for everyday Americans, including those in Ithaca. So I'm happy to take specific questions on that. And my counterpart at Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, Catherine Kagat, is here as well. So I wanted to let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you all. And Liddy and Anissa, thank you for inviting Erin and I to this community meeting. As Erin said, I'm Catherine. I'm the Research and Program Officer at Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. And really, I handle more the programmatic end and supporting cities navigate, the path from planning to implementing their pilot. So I've been on this journey with Ithaca since the start, and it's nice to finally see the application launch.
Donna.
Hi, I'm Donna Fleming. I'm an alderperson for the City of Ithaca. I'll be ending at the end of this year. I have 3 questions that have come from me and also from other people in the community. So I'm curious about where the money comes from. I received one response that it came from the mayor's group, but I don't think that they're individually contributing from their own pockets. So I want to know how it's funded. I want to know if I'm curious about whether there's other sites, other cities or municipalities that are undergoing the same study. I would assume so, especially you'd have a mix of municipalities with different demographics than us. And also I'm curious about sort of what your operating thesis is. What do you think? What are you testing? And without going into the nitty-gritty details, you're probably, I'm wondering, your operating thesis and how you're going to measure it. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna.
Okay.
Those are great questions. And I think actually the first two are probably best answered by Catherine, and then I'll help answer the third. So Catherine, you want to take those two?
Sure, yeah. So in terms of other cities that are doing the guaranteed income pilot at the moment, so there's maybe more than 20 that are thinking about doing a pilot, but at the moment there are about 15 that are actually either in a more advanced stage than Ithaca or at the same stage as Ithaca. So either implementing a pilot or getting ready to launch the application. And in New York alone, just in terms of mayors for guaranteed income, there are about two. There's one in Mount Vernon, and then there's Ithaca. There are some other ones that are not part of mayors for guaranteed income, but at least for mayors for guaranteed income, there are two in New York. And in terms of the overarching sort of framework of guaranteed income, really it's the idea that there are communities that are more impacted by poverty and financial hardship, and different from basic income, which is an income floor for everybody, regardless of financial need or regardless of income. Guaranteed income really is more targeted, and it is taking into account the idea that there are people that are just disproportionately impacted, and those are the people that we should reach. But also that this should be part of a constellation of benefits. So it's not something that should replace, it's not something that is necessarily better or more ideal, but something that should sit alongside the other social safety net policies, social safety net programs that we have, just so that people are holistically supported and are able to thrive and not just survive.
Catherine, could you also touch on where the funding is coming from? I know
yes,
MGI
sure.
is the main funder.
Yeah, so MGI is the main funder, and Ithaca can speak more about their own funding, and MGI is the main funder for Ithaca's pilot, and our funder is Jack Dorsey, along with other donors. But yeah, so for Ithaca, at least it's MGI, and then I guess Anissa and Lydia, I'll let you talk more about the other funders.
Yes, and then we have another funder who's been partnering with us throughout the entire Ithaca Eviction and Displacement Defense Project. So all of the funding in this pilot is completely from private foundations, MGI and another foundation.
And then just to give a little more context to your last question, Donna, which I think was really aimed at around what is our idea about this and how are we evaluating it or how are we measuring it? There are a number of things that go into structuring the evaluation for both the Ithaca pilot as well as the constellation of other pilots that Catherine was just talking about. And a lot of that is surrounded on the idea that we know cash works for people, right, in a variety of different ways, because the social safety net structure does a very good job sometimes of meeting particular needs. But what happens when folks have an everyday emergency, right? That we don't have good benefits for. We don't have good safety nets for people who are maybe not necessarily qualifying for, the traditional social safety net, maybe earn too much, or maybe the safety net doesn't cover those things. So the question then becomes, what do we do to help people who are, struggling every day, who are doing all the right stuff, right? Who are either looking for work or trying to work or taking care of folks in their lives and unable to work. And whether or not cash can be one of those alternatives that can help folks. So some of the questions that we're asking include, who does guaranteed income work best for and how? And as you pointed out, one of the things that we are doing is looking at a variety of different settings across the country. And the reason for that is that we recognize that guaranteed income is an expensive project, right? And so funding it is most likely going to be feasible at the federal national level, not necessarily at the state or local level. But that means we have to build a body of evidence that encompasses the full country. And so Ithaca is part of that driver right now. They're joining cities like Los Angeles, Tacoma, Washington, St. Paul in Minnesota, as well as Gainesville in Florida, Durham in North Carolina, right? The idea really is to start asking the question, how does cash work for folks in different places with different needs, so that we can help inform how policies and programs might be built to help, Americans best in the future. One of the ways that we're doing that is through the baseline survey, which functions as the application for these programs. And that survey, since you've helped your friend out, you're very aware of what's on that survey, but it runs a spectrum from everything from, income fluctuation. So we're interested, right? And is your income changing from month to month? Because that's a reality, an economic reality that people are facing now. To questions about mental health and stress and anxiety, as well as physical health. And in Ithaca's case, further questions and concerns around housing stability, as well as caregiving. And the reason why we're asking those questions is because we recognize, right, life is not one dimensional. And it is not, so easy as to say, okay, are people doing better economically, now than they were, say, before the cash, right? We're interested in being able to say, what does that cash actually do for folks from the standpoint of, does it help us live safer, healthier, happier lives? Those are important questions. And so that's what went into, designing the survey. And it's why we ask those questions.
So Erin, just to expand a little bit on what you said, the baseline survey, that's a survey that's happening in all the MGI communities that Catherine mentioned, all 15 that are functioning right now. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So these are one of the purposes of having the baseline survey is to be able to, as you've said, kind of look across the country, see what's happening in different communities, both at the beginning of the project and probably through the project. There'll be other survey opportunities, and then at the end be able to take a look back. Is that the kind of part of the reason for the baseline survey?
Yes, it absolutely is. Part of the research and part of the pilots and part of what Ithaca is doing and contributing to is this question of what can cash do? Right? And so in order to answer what cash can do, we have to understand where people are when they begin the program. And that means that before you know whether or not you might be part of the program, before you know whether you're part of a research, or part of that pilot opportunity, we have to get some idea of where Americans are right now. And so that's what the baseline survey is really, aimed at doing. It's to establish a point zero so that we can say with, relative certainty, what the cash has actually done and what it can't do. Right? Because in some ways, figuring out the limitations of programs like the pilot that Ithaca is testing is just as important. So we're setting this up in different cities across America because we understand, right, the baselines for those cities are going to be different. So we want to make sure that we're not making assumptions about how folks are doing in different areas, and who have different needs, to make sure that we understand how this as an intervention actually functions.
Great, thanks. If you've just joined us, this meeting is to answer questions that community members have. We don't have a formal presentation. There is more information available on the HSC website. But if you have a question at any point, feel free to put it in the chat. You can turn on your camera, you can raise your hand, whatever works for you. So I see that Donna says she has another question after others take their turns. So is there anybody right now who wants to ask a question? Okay, Donna, I think you should feel free to go for it.
All right, it's more about the theoretical design of this study. And that is, ideally, would you have liked to set it up such that a cash allotment, a larger cash allotment, would replace all other forms of benefits? I think that would be really interesting if you gave people cash and allowed them to spend it as they needed on housing or food or childcare or whatever is currently subsidized. Is there a way that you can test that? I think that you chose the 80% level so that you would not jeopardize people who are already receiving other benefits. But in theory, wouldn't you have loved to test people who are receiving other benefits and do away with them, but just give them cash to test? Because my understanding is that that is really the best way to give people benefits?
That's a really interesting question. And you're right. It is one of the driving questions in the guaranteed income space right now. It is not our hypothetical orientation to cash as a benefit. And part of the reason has to do with the fact that we know that cash at this amount, right? We're talking less than $1,000 a month over time. It's not going to cover all your basic necessities. And furthermore, that some of the social safety net programs, I'm thinking in particular things like insurance, right? Things like housing. Those are markets that may actually do better with some sort of intervention from government folks, whether it's opening up markets and ensuring people have access to them or subsidizing those benefits. And so we don't look at cash as a replacement for those. We see it as an also and, with the idea that those benefits are going to be important, likely for a portion of the population. But that there is also a portion of the population for whom those benefits aren't necessarily helpful, but they need something else, right? They need something to cover the edges or the ends, and that's where cash comes in. And I think, one of the important things to know about the work that we're doing is, with all of these pilots across the country and including Ithaca's, there will be folks who are on benefits and some folks who are not on benefits. And so, we want to know, right? Does cash help both groups? Does it help one group more? What are the limitations of it? And so I think that is, one of the things that we're making sure with Ithaca and with our other city partners, that they're able to work with folks as they onboard so that people can make informed decisions about whether or not they want to, say, be part of the pilot and maybe give up some benefits if that's necessary. With the idea that this is all about individual agency and choice and getting to make informed decisions. And, we really hope that we learn more about cash's interaction with benefits, but also what cash can do in the absence of those benefits.
So just to be totally clear, Donna, and I think you know this, but just in case, anybody here doesn't, anybody who makes 80% of area median income or below can apply. So it's not just the 80% people, right? So that brings us to the topic of, how does somebody who receives benefits, how will they understand what effect having this $450 a month will have on their benefits? So there is a tool developed by the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta that has been customized for our community that people can use to enter in their various kinds of benefits if they're selected for this program, and understand how $450 will affect their benefits. So some people may choose, looking at that calculator, and the calculator, I want to say, is not guaranteed to be perfect, but it is tested to be very close. So, very, very accurate, but they, no tool can ensure 100% accuracy. So the idea of the benefits calculator is to help people get an idea, understand, all right, if I accept this $450, how will it affect the particular constellation of benefits that I have? And then people can decide, well, some of my benefits may be affected. Some of my benefits may go down. However, perhaps I'm still going to come out ahead, a couple $100 ahead, more, have a couple $100 more a month in my pocket than I would without this. So some people will make the choice to go ahead and, sign up for this program if they've been selected. Some people may make a different choice using the benefits calculator. Some people may decide, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not sure I want to go forward. And that's the point of having this tool available for people who get selected into the program to be able to go through that exercise to decide if this program's right for them. Erin, did you want to add anything to that, or Catherine?
No, I think you explained it well.
The chart I put in the chat didn't format the way I wanted it to, but it's very clear and easy to read on any number of our IGI site or anywhere else. So, but I can try again in the chat too for 80% AMI.
So Donna has another question in the chat saying, but ideally, wouldn't you have liked to get waivers for your subjects so that they would not have to give up benefits? Yes, absolutely, Donna.
That
Yeah.
certainly would have been our ideal. And we worked towards that locally, diligently, tried to get waivers. Those were not an option for our community. And so we're working in the framework that we have.
Yeah,
And-
and Donna, that's something that, oh, sorry, Erin.
Oh, go ahead. Beth.
I just wanted to say that's something that MGI actually really underscores is making sure that the benefits protection work is robust and cities do as much as they can to protect the benefits eligibility of participants. There are benefits that are incredibly difficult to protect just because they're administered on a federal level. And we are not at a position yet where we can get the federal support to kind of exempt guaranteed income from those benefits. But Ithaca, you know, as Lydia and Anissa were speaking about, is that on a local level, whatever they can do, they have been trying to do so that people's eligibility are maintained even as they're getting the guaranteed income.
And one thing I'll add is that this is an area when we're talking about cash transfers, right? When we're talking about guaranteed income or the idea of universal basic income, while these ideas aren't new, this level of piloting is new for this country. And Ithaca is one of the first municipalities to roll this out in such a big, meaningful way. And it's our hope that even though Ithaca wasn't able to protect, you know, as many of those benefits this time as I know they would have liked to, that this contributes to the conversation around these pilots, and that as the body of evidence grows that tells us, you know, what cash can do for folks with and without benefits, that future pilots and future work can build on what Ithaca has done and potentially protect those benefits. So, you know, we're really grateful for all of the efforts and all of the conversations that have happened behind the scenes and on the ground in Ithaca, you know, as we're building this. And, you know, we recognize that folks are doing everything they can to try to make this work.
And Ithaca is in a great place because they're in New York, and New York has several pilots going. And so as Erin is saying, they can leverage these pilots to maybe even get state waivers if they can't get federal waivers, but working towards a kind of wider scale waiver that can be implemented in future pilots, or maybe even at the middle of when Ithaca's pilot's going on, right? A year's a long time. You never know.
Erin, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about your experience working with SEED and what the sort of boots on the ground experience was for participants in the SEED program, specifically about benefit loss, but also some of the like great successes or any challenges that you had working in that project.
Sure. So what Lydia is referencing is the Stockton Economic Empowerment Demonstration, which was a guaranteed income pilot that was done in Stockton, California, starting in 2019 and finishing up actually earlier this year. And I worked very closely with participants and with the program in that, doing both the research side, but also helping folks navigate through the benefit system in California. And I think, you know, they were in a, you know, they had a tremendous amount of rapport and a buy-in from local folks who worked really hard to figure out how to make their benefits structure a little more flexible, which was more possible given that context, right? One of the problems and benefits in the United States is that many benefits are administered at local levels, meaning that what happens in one jurisdiction is not necessarily possible in another one. But one of the things that we found is that some folks wanted to try, right, giving up some of those benefits in order to get the cash because they felt that the cash was going to meet their needs better. Right. And some folks declined to participate because they wanted to keep the benefits. So ultimately, it was just about making sure that those individuals had the information necessary to make that decision. I think, you know, one of the things that SEED also, you know, helped figure out or helped establish at least a baseline for, you know, for navigating for cities across the country is that, you know, all of this can be can be a little scary to navigate as, as local benefits folks, because you want to make sure you understand the exceptions that you're making, and you want to make sure you're serving your population really well. And so I think SEED also taught us just that ongoing dialogue is really, really important. And that's what, Catherine's referencing. So making sure that, it's not a one and done conversation, but that it's ongoing as we navigate through this. Lydia, I don't know if that answers your question or not.
That was great. Yeah, thank you. Paige has a question in the chat that I will read. This is a question about logistics. How will the cash be dispersed? Bank transfers, debit cards, checks, etc. Thanks. The answer is bank cards. Refillable debit cards and people can attach them to other bank accounts if they want to, or they can pull out the cash. It's just like having a regular debit card in your pocket with however much money you have on it.
Does that answer your question, Paige? Okay, looks like yes. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands at this moment, so I'm just going to throw out a question that we know has come up. And I think we touched on this lightly at the beginning, but we can talk about it again. So some members of the community have asked, like, why are there like questions that feel personal on the survey? Why are there questions about like my mental health? Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good thing to talk about, because it's one of those that I know, occasionally catches folks by surprise. I think it's always difficult to talk about mental health or to talk about things that are really personal to folks. And we recognize that it's hard in the best of times. And right now, this country is not, in the best of times. We're facing a pandemic, we're facing economic upheaval. People are having a hard time. And so these questions can be even more personal and difficult to answer right now. And in some ways, that's what makes them even more important to answer right now. One of the things that we want to know is, how are Americans doing, so that we can help figure out how to help folks and how to work with folks so that they can do better, so that they can thrive. And I think, one of the important things is understanding how anxiety and depression, which we have a lot of research that says those things are linked to financial volatility. Those things are linked to experiences of financial insecurity. So understanding how they're affected by guaranteed income is really important. We do recognize that, like I said before, those are hard questions sometimes. And so one of the things that you'll note is that on the survey, other than the eligibility criteria, which we have to determine to make sure that folks are eligible for the pilot as Ithaca has set it up, all of those questions are optional. We certainly hope that folks will answer them to the best of their ability, but we recognize that not everybody is able to answer those questions all the time. And so that's why, you'll find you can skip those questions. We definitely want to encourage folks to do them, but we get that they're hard. I think, one of the things that we found in the Stockton Economic Empowerment Demonstration, at least as far as the first year findings go, which we released earlier this year, is that guaranteed income did affect mental health. It also affected physical health and experiences of both of those. And so, we want to see whether or not that's something that is true across different, places in the country, or whether it's confined to Stockton. So that's, one of the reasons we ask those personal questions. One of the things that I want to note is that all of this data, when we handle it on our end at the Center for Guaranteed Income Research, it will be de-identified and only used for analysis in the aggregate, so that no one's personal data or personal answers will ever be released in some sort of capacity that would link it directly with them or that would make them identifiable. And we hope that that level of confidentiality and anonymity helps folks feel a little more comfortable with, answering some of those questions, which we know are really personal.
Thanks, Erin. Can we talk a little bit about what it would mean to be in the control group? So we've focused a lot on the treatment group, which will be the population of 110 people who are going to be receiving guaranteed income. What's the experience like for somebody who's in the control group, and what's the benefit to participating in control?
Absolutely. So this is sometimes one of the most, I wouldn't say, hidden, but it may be one of the most difficult pieces about research at this level to understand, which is that when folks fill out the application, they have a chance of being sorted into one of two groups of participants, as Liddy said, the treatment group who's receiving the intervention and the control group who's not. The control group is, and this is my bias because I've spent a lot of time working with participants in control groups in a variety of different settings, but in some ways they're as important, if not more important, than folks in the treatment group, because they tell us what is happening, for everyday folks in these settings, right? One of the benefits that they get from participating is that all future research activities, so any survey they fill out after that baseline survey, they get compensated. So they get a $30 gift card for their time, because we recognize that the survey can take 45 minutes or so to fill out, even by yourself on a device. And so we want to compensate people for that. It's important to recognize that the treatment group also gets compensated for surveys. And part of the reason for that is that the cash really is no strings attached. So we want both groups to be compensated for their activities. Control group folks may also have the opportunity to participate in qualitative interviews, which are anonymous and confidential and conducted with the research team. And they help tell us a little bit more about what challenges are facing folks in Ithaca with regard to the questions that we're asking about on that quantitative survey. Control group folks also, they're contributing more than anybody else to our understanding of what it's like over the course of the pilot for the vast majority of residents who aren't getting the money, right? They're telling us what it's like to be in Ithaca and be facing, the challenges, but also the strengths of, that are available in Ithaca. And so they help us understand what that baseline truly is over the course of the pilot.
Thank you, Erin.
So for those of you who are watching the recording later, Liddy just put in the chat about the Stockton demonstration that we've been talking about. That kind of was the first of study of this kind in the US. So you can Google later stocktondemonstration.org to read more about how guaranteed income affected people in Stockton and what they had to say about it.
I have another question. Will there be an opportunity to hear from direct individuals who are in either treatment and control, not anonymously? Will anybody be able to be sharing their stories with a face?
As part of the research, the answer is no, because all research activities are confidential. But every city involved in MGI is participating in narrative change work, and I'll let Catherine talk about the details of that.
Yeah, so as well as the research side of things, there is a storytelling cohort, at least that's what we like to call this group of participants that are going to be more front-facing and maybe do media engagements and really have the opportunity to tell their stories their own way, not just have their stories written about. And really, again, as Erin is saying, it's really to contribute to the narrative change, because we all know that while we have this data, sometimes it's not really about the data, but more so about changing people's hearts and how they're viewing or perceiving people who are receiving benefits and people who might be receiving this cash. And so having people tell their own experiences and share their insights on those experiences is going to be really valuable in addition to the data and what the research offers. And I can let Anissa and Liddy speak more about their plans for the Ithaca pilot in terms of that storytelling cohort.
I'm not sure that we have a complete plan to share at this time about our storytelling cohort, only that we're excited that to have one, hopefully. And that only people who choose to tell their story will be asked to tell their story. So at a local level right now, I think it's important to just reiterate that nobody in Ithaca can see any details related to the assessments that people have filled out. We don't know the names of people who are applying. We don't know anything about that data that's being collected now. Going forward at a local level, we're really going to have very limited information about who's participating in the research. We aren't going to be sharing that information with anyone, but that there will be this storyteller cohort that have chosen to tell their stories, and we're really looking forward to, because we know that that's impactful to hear people's real stories.
And just to underscore, the research activities and the storytelling activities, as everybody sort of mentioned casually, they're all optional. So even if people are not participating in these activities, even if they said yes in the instance, but they stop participating in them, that doesn't affect their ability to get the monthly payments. They still will be getting the monthly payments.
Yeah, and I think that part is really important. That, somebody, changes their mind, does one survey at one point when the survey is offered, but doesn't want to do another one, that's an option. If somebody, changes their mind about their involvement, that they may withdraw if that's what they want to do. What I'll also say about storytelling, and I think this was probably made clear through what others have said, but we won't be selecting the storytellers. Once people get onboarded, and understand how the research process will work, they work their way through the benefits calculator, they decide that they want to participate, people will also have an opportunity to voluntarily step forward if they want to be one of those front-facing storytellers. So we're not going to select them. We're not going to draw names from a hat and be like, oh, Anissa, guess what? You're a storyteller. That's not how it will work. So the storytelling component of it is voluntary.
I also want to add something to what Liddy had said in terms of what information the Ithaca city team and the HSC team will have versus what they won't about the research, because I think it is really important to clarify the level of confidentiality that's involved in participating in research like this. As she mentioned, no one at the city level or at the programmatic level will have access to any of the names of who has applied before randomization and assignment. So right now, if someone in Ithaca has applied and they've shared their information, Ithaca has no way of knowing that that person has applied or what they've shared. And that's entirely confidential. One of the things that we do on our end when we randomly assign folks to either the treatment or the control group is that obviously there are going to be more applicants than there are spots in the treatment and the control group. There are 110 members of the treatment group and there will be 132 members of the control group. Anyone who is not sorted into either one of those groups, their information is going to be destroyed so that way, anything that they've shared, it's not going to be used for future research. It's not going to be, relied upon. It's not going to get, sent out to anyone or used in any report, right? It is, entirely up to them. I think one of the other things to know is that even once we randomly assign folks to groups, we will be sending the names and the necessary contact information to Ithaca so that they can contact folks who have been assigned to the treatment group and onboard them, get them those bank cards, get them set up. But they will not know anything about how those individuals answered the surveys, right? They won't know any of those individual questions beyond, their name and the necessary contact information. And Ithaca will not at any time have access to the control group, whether it's just the names or not. That will be handled entirely on the research side to protect confidentiality and anonymity. So we really are making sure that folks' information is protected. And we aren't putting them in a position where anyone's going to know how they answered any of the questions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and once folks are onboarded, I'm sorry, I just wanted to add one more layer of that. After the onboarding phase, which is what HSC is, you know, helping people get through, all further communications and research opportunities will come through our research fellow position. And so, you know, the faces of HSC aren't going to people who are, we're not going to be asking any of those research questions going forward. We're also not really going to be the, you know, we can help troubleshoot with some technical, like if you lose your credit card, here's the number to call to get it replaced sort of things. But it's not a program in the way that we're all sort of traditionally trained to think of programs with like ongoing case management or any of those additional supports connected to it in any way from HSC or otherwise. Obviously, our 211 helpline is able to offer information referral widely in our community. So if people have needs, always dial 211. But this isn't going to be a program with any sort of local ongoing, we're not building relationships with the people in the treatment group or control, obviously. I just think that's important to know for the future of IGI.
And just to add to what Liddy's saying in terms of like, oh, sorry, Anissa, if you were going to say something.
No, go ahead. I'll go after you.
Oh, I was going to say in terms of onboarding and getting the list of those treatment names, the names and treatment group, really only a small handful of people will get to see that list. It won't be like the entire organization that's, you know, implementing the program. It's really just who's doing the onboarding, because as Liddy said, it isn't the sort of thing where they get special treatment because they're in the pilot. They will essentially get the same sort of services that everybody else in Ithaca is getting. And when they do want those services, you know, the pilot team is never going to say, this is somebody from the treatment group in the pilot. They're always just going to say, this is just somebody from Ithaca who I need these services. So really, it's a small number of people that will ever see the name of both the treatment group, because it's just a program team, and then of course the control group and the treatment group, it's going to be the research fellow and the researchers.
And the research fellow works with the Center for Guaranteed Income Research. So they are part of the research team in that side, meaning that they won't be in a position where they're sharing that information with anybody who is not part of the research team.
So one of the things that I think really appeals to me, and I think to a lot of people in this room about this opportunity, guaranteed income, is it's really an approach that's based around dignity. People are given money to use as they see fit. We believe that people know how best to use the money in their lives, how they need to use it, how they want to use it. And that's something that is very unique about this type of program. And that's part of the reason that we're so excited about piloting it here in Ithaca. And one other thing I wanted to say about the, you know, people's identities and so on, it's completely up to the people who get selected into the group that gets guaranteed income, whether they want to tell anybody in their lives that they're receiving that money. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but that's completely up to the person that's receiving the benefit. When I say benefit, I mean the cash transfer.
Yeah, I think the general idea is it's okay for them to say that they're part of the pilot, but it's not okay for us to say they're not, that they are part of the pilot. So they can, yes, absolutely self-disclose as long as we're not the one disclosing that information.
I see Donna has another question in the chat. How many people have applied so far?
So far, Ithaca has 362 completed applications that attest to being eligible. I believe there will be one verification during the data cleaning before randomization that has to do with verifying that those addresses are actually eligible pursuant with the Ithaca metropolitan area boundaries. But yeah, that's where Ithaca is. It's great to see residents, you know, interested in taking part in this. And, you know, we appreciate all of the outreach effort and all of the help that folks have been giving each other to get these applications done.
Do people have any final questions? All right. So I will try to have the recording of this information session available and posted on our on the IGI site, which has been put a couple times in the chat. We can put it in again for you if people want to see it. The deadline is tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. If you have friends or family or clients or people that are thinking about applying, and maybe you feel a little bit more empowered with information after attending today and want to share that information, that would be great. We really do want to reach the people who we think will benefit from participation in this research and are invested in the future of the city of Ithaca. And they're everywhere. So unfortunately, because of the uptick in COVID, we aren't able to do any in-person assistance with applications at this time, but we can help troubleshoot. If people want to dial 211 and get some help troubleshooting some of this, we've had some of the similar basic sort of technical questions a few times. They are available today and tomorrow to help troubleshoot those questions for folks until 5 o'clock. Overnight hours, they'd be talking to Rochester, so try to call during the day. Yeah. Yes,
One last thing I wanted to say is that, so if anybody's watching this and you have an application that you've initiated in the system and you've decided like, okay, hey, now I've had some of my questions answered, I want to go ahead and go back and finish up and submit it, that's great. If you have an application in the system and you don't want to go forward, you don't have to. But we're really hoping that, people who are interested in this and think that they can benefit, have a shot. That's why we extended the deadline. We got some feedback that people needed more time or wanted more time. So please do go ahead if you would like to apply, to go ahead and apply. We think it's a pretty innovative project worth giving a try. If you put your application in and you get selected, you will still have an opportunity you still have an opportunity to decide you don't want to do it. You don't have to opt in. Maybe you want to spend the next month thinking about like, hey, if I got selected, would I want to do it? So just know that you can always opt out if you want to. But if you don't apply, you 100% won't get the opportunity to receive this benefit. And I keep calling it a benefit, which I know can be a little confusing. You won't have an opportunity to receive the $450 cash for 12 months.
To answer that question from ADM Computer iPad, there isn't a mechanism to go back and reopen a survey that's already been completed. I don't know if Erin's going to cringe at me for saying this, but I think that person could just start again. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so here's what I was going to say. One of the things that we do during our data cleaning, right, which is where we go through and we ensure that, we have, say, a person's name and their contact information, because that's going to be necessary to onboard. We also make sure that the person has attested to meeting the eligibility criteria and verify their address. One of the other things that we do is we remove duplicates. Now, if someone applies more than once, the reason we remove the duplicate is just to ensure that they are not getting more chance than someone else who might have only applied once. However, in the case of having two identical applications, one of which has more answers, we would probably delete the one that had fewer answers and keep the one that had more answers. So if after hearing this, you feel comfortable reapplying and answering more of the questions that are being asked by the survey, please feel free to do so. You can also note in the, why you're applying that it is a duplicate and that you would like this version to be kept.
And I will just say, just in case it isn't clear, that the completion of your survey has nothing to do with your chances of getting to be chosen.
Just to clarify,
yeah.
you must complete the survey, but completing the survey doesn't mean you've answered every
Exactly.
question. So we don't just delete surveys where someone hasn't answered questions. That's okay. That's your right. It's a voluntary, survey even at this point. So don't feel that in order to increase your chances, you need to share more information. We never want to put people in a position where they feel they are only sharing information to have a chance at this.
So long as you submit your application, so long as you provide your contact information and attest to the eligibility, you have the same amount of chance as somebody who has answered 100% of the questions.
And in terms of where to answer that note, there's a question near the beginning of the survey that's like, why are you participating in this? That's where I would note it if you were trying to note that. But we do delete duplicates. So that's also important for folks to understand.
Okay, well, with that, we thank everybody for being here today. Our partners at UPenn Center for Guaranteed Income Research, our partners with MGI, 211, or one of our local older people, and everybody who came to this session to ask questions. We really appreciate it. We understand that lots of us have our next things that we need to go to. So I think with that, we will be signing off.
Thank you.